Welcome back, everybody. Excuse me. We are continuing tonight the sixth chapter where we left off, the sixth chapter of Sha'ar Yichud Be'emunah. We did mention in the very beginning of Sha'ar Yichud Be'emunah, we can't say it's any more recently began. We're, I believe, about 8-9 weeks into it, but it's a new segment, basically. We had the merit to conclude the entire Likutei Amarim, and from then we went on to the Sha'ar Yichud Be'emunah, which is the second segment. We did point out this definitely a unique study that kind of opens up real windows into giving us the opportunity in the V'yadaita Hayim, the idea of Elokus, not only believing in Elokus, a real important change on our approach to Hashem, to the divine, in unimaginable manners. Literally, when one has clarity in this study, really everything changes on the most basic, simple, and elemental approach to the Emes Hashem L'Elam. So we were holding in middle of we began last week the sixth chapter. We did point out that the sixth chapter, you see a clear correlation to the fourth. The end of the fourth, the fifth is all in one bracket. You see it's distinct in the whole lashon, the whole style and choice of words and concepts. Very different than the entire Sha'ar Yichud Be'emunah, which is a total of comprised of 12 chapters. But we spoke about it then as well, 2 weeks ago and 3 weeks ago. I will just say that the beginning of Perek Hey, that explanation of that medrash, definitely contributes to the overall message of Perek Daled, the fourth chapter, which the Alter Rebbe introduces this whole idea of Gvura, of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, the Alter Rebbe doesn't introduce Gvura, it's Gvura Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, HaGadol HaGiber, understandably. We're talking about how it fits in to our appreciation of the fact that we don't see Elokus despite everything, every detail in front of our eyes is just the manifestation of Hashem's reality. As Alter Rebbe explains in the second and third, that it ultimately, there's nothing, it's not that the Dvar Hashem, the word of Hashem, the energy of Hashem just keeps things intact. They were created 6,000 years ago, but just to keep them intact, Hashem makes sure to do so. No, but every second, not to repeat again, all these points are really a click away, as we speak about quite a few times, that it's not really fair even to take the time of a present class to go through so much of the past, but let's try to get into it right away. And because everything is a HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and when you look at even a stone, the only reason why the stone is there is just because Hashem is right now giving energy to the stone. 100% of the existence of the stone is because Hashem's, the Dvar Hashem, which is Mahava Machayim Mekayim, that stone which gives life and existence. So why don't we see the Dvar Hashem if that's its sole reality? This sole existence is solely because of that energy of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So why don't we see the emes of what it truly is? And again, if it's a stone, the tree, and everything, what we see in front of our eyes, and Alter Rebbe introduces this whole idea and this is the conclusion of Perek Gimel with that important question, which begs, and then Perek Daled explaining, it's all true, but Hashem has another midah, which is the giber, which covers up. The whole point of the gvura is to cover up that gdula, the chesed. And with this he enters into this Perek Hey, and again a whole beautiful explanation that in the end it's the same HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's not chas v'shalom. We give the example, someone goes into a room for 6 hours because they have exam the next day. It's not that they're in confinement and hysterical, locked up for 6 hours. No, they put themselves in a situation that because they wanted to be secluded. They didn't want to meet people, they don't want people to meet them. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to meet him not so easy, but with effort, because he has the master plan. As we spoke about it when we were dealing with those chapters and that information in Perek Daled. So he wants us to find him, and therefore he didn't want us to. Not everything should be from the perspective of the Gdula Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Gdula, the Chesed, because then nothing would be in the onset, because in the face of infinity, nothing finite could ever be. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu therefore wanted to conceal himself, but it's not a true concealment, because it's his decision, similar to that example. He covers, he obscures his own reality, which that is the very character of the Midah of Gvura, that it covers up, it eclipses on the Emes Hashem, and again, based on that master plan, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted there should be a creation. He wanted the world should look like the way it is, and the Yid comes into the picture, and through his Avodah, refining, elevating, sublimating Elam Hazeh, primarily through his learning Torah, doing mitzvahs, and by extension, Kol Masecha L'Shem Shamayim, Kol Derech Eyu. Again, we spoke about this, and with this, the Alter Rebbe begins, and again, Perek Vav brings that message home. In the end of the day, it's the same HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem Hu Elikim. That's really the conclusion of the very whole chapter of Perek Vav, but that's the message which is Alter Rebbe begins in the Perek Vav, Shem Elikim. First of all, again, he goes on, Midas HaGvura, about Tzimtzum, it's about concealment, it's about contraction of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's what the point of Hateva has the same numerology of Shem Elikim, which again is about nature. Nature is Melashon Tubu v'Yamsuf. It drowns, it sinks, that emes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But again, part of that very master plan of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But the message in Perek Vav, that in the end of the day, it's two expressions of the same God. So when you see Bashamayim Mimal, Oretz Mitachas, you should know that in the end, it's not like it's a real concealment and a real cover-up over HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Nothing can cover up over HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Similar to that example, it's an expression of HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. We left off obviously from the perspective of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, similar to that example. You know, they could open the door at any time. They're not really confined because it's all their decision. And so too from the perspective of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, nothing. Hashem Hu Shmei Elikim Machashahu Shmei Elikim is Echad. It's all one. We also give the example, someone with two hands. It's not like if one hand will spill a cup of milk, the other hand would strike it. How did you spill a cup of milk? No, it's the same organism. It's two hands, actually. We did point out the right is associated with Chesed, the left with Gvura, and so on, but it's one entity. Again, we are going to go further. All this information of the Perek Vav and the previous Prokim, it's a click away. We do mention in every class, namely for the newcomers, wherever you see this class, but it's worth it also to tap into the original website, which is tanyaonline.com, tanyaonline, one word.com, simple. And the advantage is that you can follow the text as you follow the class. The text is on a separate scroll bar, and all the previous classes, for that matter, from the beginning of not only Shaykh Emunah, but from Likutei Amarim, is all this easy access, a click away, and it opens up in the same fashion. So all the information of this chapter, the previous chapters, it's truly a click away. So we'll go on with where we're holding, which is 5 lines on the bottom of page 160 in the original text. And therefore, Gam Ha'aretz, the 5th line, Gam Ha'aretz mitachas la'aretz, and therefore the land and everything under the land. Ayin ve'efes mamash. Under means, say, like the mayim, the waters, any point of creation which we don't easily, instinctively see the connection between that and a lukus, maybe the oretz or tachas la'oretz, the waters, for example, which, even though the oretz is the lowest, you say, but as the waters go down, there is shamayim mimal, well, oretz mitachas is also, like the Alter Rebbe begins, is the mayim mitachas la'oretz, in other words, on the lower level. So anything which we don't initially see the connection between that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we are meant to know that the oretz and tachas la'oretz, in essence, not only they're connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they are truly ayin ve'efes mamash. L'gabi HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they're completely nothing in the context of true nothing, in the context of true nothingness in the face of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because what are they? They are just a manifestation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And why don't you see the energy of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Well, that's a midah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Eibishter has another midah Gvura which conceals that, but you know that midah? It's also HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore, Hu Shmai Echad Hashem in his name, or Hashem Elikim, that Hashem, which is the energy coming from Baruch, which gives life and existence to all of creation, and that is their soul, not 80%, 90% of them. Everything about them is the Dvar Hashem, the word of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the energy of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but the same God, which is the Gdul of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but the same God as the Gvura, that He doesn't allow us to see, but it's all part of Him, and it's because part of Him. So the truth of the matter is, the Oretz and Tachas Lars are truly Ayin Ve'efes Mamash. They're truly totally not only insignificant in the context of meaning and significance, but totally nothing is no thing at all in the face of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They don't really have any identity. I feel b'shem oid, even to say, well, there's HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and also there is Olam. No, because oid is Lashon Tafel, and that's really the message, Ein Oid, in that very pasuk. We had Daita Imashvei Kashem Olikim Ein Oid. In other places it says Ein Oid. No, there's no Oid. It's not secondary. Well, really, there's a Kodesh Baruch Hu, and then you have the Oid, which is Lashon Tafel, secondary. There's also an Olam, and it's really subordinate to the energy of a Kodesh Baruch Hu. No, it's not subordinate. It's not an existent entity on its own at all, based on everything that Alter Rebbe relates to us and shares with us so clearly. Ein Oid. They're not even called Oid, which is Lashon Tafel. Like we find it Azal in Kiddushin, it says Yehuda ba'Oid likra. The Gemara speaks about there that the custom, and we need the custom of Yehuda, and then on top of that we need a support from the pasuk. No, once you have the pasuk, so the custom of Yehuda is not to be dignified, because the main proof is from the kra, is from the pasuk. It's not chas v'shalom. The pasuk is not secondary and the kra. No, it's the opposite. And in this case over here, ukiguf, we find this, the concept of something existing but secondary to something else. Yeah, we do find it. For example, guf shutafel and neshama b'chai shebaseicha, the body, which is secondary to the neshama and the life and shebaseicha, and the life and energy shebaseicha, which is in the body. There we do find the idea of oid. Because the body is not just an extension of the soul. As we can all appreciate, after 120, the body doesn't function. But does it disappear? No, it doesn't disappear at all. For the first few moments, it doesn't begin to decay. So you have the entire body, the neshama is not there anymore, Rahman al-Islam. But why doesn't it disappear? Answer, because it has its independent existence. The mitzi is the physicality of the body is not there because of the energy of the neshama. The neshama makes it function. So what's the most important? Obviously the neshama. Because after 120, or conceptually, we're entering in more and more Yimei Mashiach, where there's going to be Yimei Eitz, Yimei Ami, and eventually Chaim Nitzchim, and those who passed on will be resurrected. But conceptually, when the neshama leaves the guf, the body, the body, there's no function, and there's no purpose, and there's nothing there that we could even have any gain over here. The eye can see, and the ear cannot hear, and nothing really really means anything, because there is no function, understandably, but the body doesn't disappear. So the body is the oid. Even when the person's alive, there's a general appreciation that what is important, what exists, is the neshama. And we're not even talking about the godly neshama. We're talking about the chayes shebaseicha, just what makes me see, hear, walk, move, feel, think, speak, and so on. So the neshama, that's the energy, that's the main. The guf is oid. It's the tafel, the secondary to the neshama. Yeah, there you have that. Which the Alter Rebbe is going to contrast, that doesn't exist when you're dealing with the gashmias of Elam Hazi. Yeah, it's the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and they're oid. No. If you recall, the Alter Rebbe pointed this out, that if HaKadosh Baruch Hu would pull away right now, he would not give chayes to that stone. He would not pump energy into that stone. What would happen with the stone? It wouldn't be like a broken stone, a decay stone. Just the stone would totally disappear. Because the stone is not an oid. It's not secondary. It doesn't exist in the face of the Dvar Hashem, which is Mahava, Machayim, Mekayim, Mesei, in the face of the word of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the energy of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which constantly gives it life and light, and vivifies every moment. Again, now the Alter Rebbe so beautifully explains in the first and the second chapter of Shayichid Memuna, a click away. So it's not even called Oid. So when it comes to the Guf, it's called Oid, in the face of the Neshama, and the Chayes Shebaseicha, For that matter, we do say in V'zeu Shekosuv, V'zeu She'emrim, based on the V'zeu Shekosuv, right? What it says in Tehillim, which we recite every single day in Sukkot Zimra. Ahal Hashem b'chaye. David HaMelech writes, I praise HaKadosh Baruch Hu with my life, as Zamra l'kai ba'edi, that I sing to my God with my oidi. So ba'edi means, really the literal translation is, as long as I'm around, I'm singing to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but there's an inner meaning as well, be'oidi, in that oid, which is my body. Not only I praise HaKadosh Baruch Hu with my nefesh, my soul, but I praise HaKadosh Baruch Hu with my body. And David HaMelech, compartmentalizes the two expressions, because one is with the main, which is the neshama, the nefesh, the main entity, as we can all appreciate, as just mentioned, and I praise HaKadosh Baruch Hu with my chayoy, with my life as well. I sing to HaKadosh Baruch Hu with my oidi, with my body. And for that matter, you find the two names of HaKadosh Baruch Hu with precision, right? Tehillim, everything David HaMelech wrote and expressed, namely in the comprising of Tehillim, Ne'im Zmiris Yisrael was with precision. So you see over here, Hashem, he uses B'chayoy, and Ba'odi, he uses Elikim. We can all appreciate that, because the Chayis, that similarity, because the Chayis of the Neshama, that's life. That's something, again, we can't see it with our physical eye, but we can certainly identify it with our sensory eye. That's life. The similarity to Shem Havaya, that is which is Mahava Mechayim Mekayim, like Dr. Rebbe explained in the previous chapters. V'ha'oid, which is the guf, which is tofel, which is secondary, comes from Shem Elikim, which is the keli, which is the container, similar to Shemesh Umogin, Hashem Elikim, like Dr. Rebbe explained in the very beginning of chapter Hey, which we spoke about it in length, also a click away. So that we can appreciate why he used those two names. Again, this is a quick brackets. So we have to understand really if everything with Shem Elikim, associated with Shem Elikim, is really Tafel Shem Havaya, why does it manifest into two entities, one the Neshama, one the Guf, which is an item, which is a Tafel, and not the Batal Mitzias. We can all understand it. Think about it for a moment. You can understand it. It's not a great contradiction, but we're gonna go on with a message which Al Rebbe contrasts this to the way the creation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not even called the actual physical creation, or this our approach, or this what we see in the makeup of Olam. Be the stone, the tree, the mountain, every part of Olam, for that matter, exists on every single Olam. This is what we're used to. This is what we're talking about. We find ourselves in Olam Haza, Larichas Yamim Mishanim Tevis. So when we focus on Olam Haza, we could right away see this contrast, because the Neshama, the reason why the Neguf is called the Oid, it's like we said before, the Neshama Eina Mahava Guf. The Neshama doesn't create the body. It doesn't bring the body into existence mi'ayin liyesh with this ex nihilo manner, which is from nothing to something. No, as Alter Rebbe is going to point out over here, the body, it has a different source. The body is like the Gemara says, Shloisha Shutfin Yesh Ba'adam, the father, the mother. There was the conception, and that's ultimately which created. That's where the body came about, and subsequently the body is sustained by the nourishment of the mother. And later, when the child is born, it has to eat and drink on its own in order to sustain the body. The body should have kiyum. It's not just an extension of the neshama. It's not because the nefesh exists and is alive, therefore the body is alive. Not so. And again, by contrast to everything else in the face of Shem Havaya, nothing exists without Shem Havaya. And the creation is just an extension of the Shem Hashem, 100% of it, not only an oid that it contributes to the Nivraim, to creation, but it is the mere energy of creation. Again, in comparison to the Guf and the Nefesh, the Guf has its independent chayis, its independent existence. It's total independability. The neshama gives it life. The neshama gives it function, and that's when the neshama is called the main chayoy. That is the ikir, and then the guf is the tafel. But it's two separate entities, and that's what he said. That's what he says. Neshama does not give the guf its life and existence. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in contrast to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which brings everything into existence from a state of nothing to a state of something. Ex nihilo, so hakoil bottle b'mitzias etzlei. Everything is truly bottle. in a way that kimei eira shemesh b'shemesh. How much is it bottle? How much does it stand in total nullification? Like the Ziv HaShemesh, like the ray of the sun within the sun. Again, this is something which is also a click away, and it's important to see. The Alter Rebbe explains this idea in the 3rd chapter of Shayich B'Emunah, relatively recently learned that the ray of the sun, which this is what we appreciate, this is what we identify. It's warm outside. You open your back door or front door, whatever. You have the warmth. You have the shine of the sun. Not the ball of the sun. My son, I opened the door. The sun was in my backyard. No, the sun was not in your backyard. It was the ray of the sun. The sun is far away. The moir, the illuminator itself is is not there. We couldn't withstand that the sun itself if the sun was a bit too close. Not only that close. That close as in the previous expression, but even on high, we know it's in a particular area that it would be a little closer, everything would be consumed into the heat and the energy of the sun. So when you say the sun, you appreciate is the ray, what we appreciate is the ray of the sun. Again, the brightness, the warmth, megit to a shomesh. We know that the sun is a great contributor in the development of the whole planet. So it's all the rays. So now, where does this ray begin? Again, when we're speaking about the ray of the sun, but where does this ray begin? Back to the message, which is the most what the Alter Rebbe is pointing out over here. The Eira Shemesh b'Shemesh. He elaborates on this mashal, on this metaphor in the 3rd chapter, which is a click away. Again, rather see it in length and in elaboration. But basically, this ziv, this ray, where does it begin? It begins out of the ball of the sun. That's when you can see it. That's when you can appreciate it. But if you make a clear calculation that if it could begin over here, once the ball of the sun, the ending, meaning the conclusion, or when there's the ball of the sun, can say come to an end. But in other words, towards the end, towards the side, towards the direction of the end of the sun, that's when the ray begins. So how much more so, the ray is for sure within the ball of the sun itself. If it can have a koyach and ashpa from the ball of the sun outwards, how much more so within the ball, the luminescent, the illuminator, the sun itself. The only thing is, when it's within the sun itself, you can't identify it. You can only identify the ball, the energy of the sun itself. Where's the ray? It has to be there, because if it can express itself out of the ball of the sun, how much more so it can express itself within the ball? It is there within the ball of the sun, but what do you see? When you, within the ball of the sun, you don't identify anything, nor that powerful ray, because the only thing which exists is just the sun itself. And so too, everything, all of creation, is just a mere extension of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The fact that you see it the way it is because our eye cannot capture. By that itself, we still have to understand. We know the ball comes to an end. As grand as the sun is, Kuf Zamal Zayin, 167 times bigger than the planet Earth, as the Rambam points out. But there's a beginning, there's an end, and therefore we have the ray, and that's what Alter Rebbe asked in Perek Gimel. Just to quickly repeat, so that comes to an end. We can appreciate that the ray just begins out of the sun as opposed to within the sun. It's batal b'mitzias, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu there's nothing devoid of. There's no area devoid of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. No, there's illuminator is everywhere. So how can exist a ray, meaning to say something to identify other than HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself? There's no end, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu is everywhere. So how could we see creation the way we see creation? We identify creation. That was that question which we mentioned in the end of Perek Gimel. Alter Rebbe introduces in Perek Dalet. Yeah, the truth of the matter is we shouldn't have seen anything, only the Dvar Hashem. And for that matter, when the Dvar Hashem is Mahava Mechayim, and that flow of energy, really there's nothing else exists. Because that's, in the end of the day, an expression of Gdulas Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu associated with the infinity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and nothing finite can ever stand within the infinity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Actually, look at the same example. The sun would be a bit too close. It wouldn't be just a bit too hot, a bit too bright. We've been consumed into the heat of the sun. So if it would be just an expression of the Gdula of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, nothing really would have been able to exist at all. not only, we pointed this out, in the beginning of, towards the beginning of Perek, this very chapter Vav, you see the fourth line, the original text, V'yibotlu b'metzius, means to say there wouldn't really exist at all. Not a world which recognizes more HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If there wouldn't be the Gvura, only the Gdula of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Chesed, which is an expression of the infinity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and nothing finite would have ever really existed in the onset. So that was the, and therefore that should have been default. No world, because Hashem is here, nothing else could be here. So why do we see the world the way it is? That was the message of Perek Dalet. That there is another midah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is called Gvura. That it takes that emes and just makes it look as if it is the way we see and appreciate Olam Hazeh. Doesn't demonstrate that very emes of that, what it truly is. That stone is not proclaiming and demonstrating and screaming even, Einid Malvadi, I'm just about God and godliness. It's not. Why? Because that's the Gvura of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's another decision of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's another expression of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But what is it really? It's like the Eir HaShemesh B'Shemesh. Everything you see around you is really not like that ray within the sun. It's not just try to find it, look for it, you'll see the ray within it. You never will find the ray within the ball of the sun. What you'll only see is the sun itself. Meaning it's Batul B'Metzius, it's a non-existent entity. And that is the truth of everything within Olam Hazeh. In all Elamis, all worlds, but again, what we're accustomed to, we always mention, accustomed to Larichas Yamim V'Shanim Tevis. We look at the Olam, we should really know that it's not like an Eid, something else that is dependent on the Eid Hashem, but it's nothing else other than the energy of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hence, it really doesn't exist, similar to the ray of the sun within the sun. Because there's no Ikir and Tafel, something which is the main and then secondary. Like you would think about, the truth of the matter, we don't need another mashal of the Neshama, the Guf. The Kuf has its independent energy. It functions with the Eir Neshama, but it's not there because of the Eir Neshama. Again, as we pointed out, its original makeup, and then subsequently, from the nourishment, the mother's nourishment, and then its own dependability on eating and drinking. Why does it have to eat and drink? If it would be an extension of the neshama, it wouldn't need to, but we see it does. Because it does have its independent existence. Rahman al-Islam, after 120, it doesn't disappear. As opposed to HaKadosh Baruch Hu would stop creating that stone. Right now the stone would disappear completely. So what is it? It's only the Dvar Hashem. And the bittul, in other words, the nullification, is not only a nullification, yeah, I recognize you, I sense you, I appreciate you. There is no I. Everything is truly batul b'mitzias. Unlike the guf, the bittul of the guf, the neshama. There is a bittul because everything secondary is batul. Stands in a state of nullification, subservience to the ikir, this which is the main, similar to the guf, to the neshama. But in this case, there is no ikir and tafel. Everything stands in bittul b'mitzias. It's non-existent, just like the Eir HaShemesh, when it exists within the shemesh, within the sun. And therefore the pasuk needed to warn means say to point out and to note that we to be careful with our approach and appreciation of Olam Hazeh in a way that not to believe that Olam Hazeh or everything we see exists, appreciating and acknowledging that it exists because of an higher kayach, which is a HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but nonetheless it has its independent existence. Like we think about like a tape recorder. Say tape recorder, it's like a past memory. Any electrical device, and you put in a battery into that electrical device, and that's the way it works. Take out the battery, the electrical device is still there. For that matter, it remains much more costly than the battery, even though without the battery, it's a piece of plastic or metal. But the battery which makes it function. And therefore the pasuk tzarich lahazir has to immediately to warn us. Warn us means in this context that we should be careful and pay additional attention. That it's not like that. It's not like the guf and the neshama, the device and the battery. No, that you should know today and you should turn to your heart, meaning to say, may your heart pay attention to this. It should not ascend on your mind that the heaven and the whole entire heavenly army, you say heavenly army, the sun, the moon, the stars, and anything associated with the heavenly army, and the land and everything which fills the land. There is a davar nifrid b'fnei atzmei, it has a separate entity. An entity which is dependent on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It exists as a separate entity, similar to the body. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the Ikir, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one which fills this world and gives function to this world, similar to Kislapshus and Neshama Beguf, like the Neshama invests in the body. And so too, HaKadosh Baruch Hu does the same. Again, Shalai Sala, you should not think so, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does the same, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu provides the kayach of sprout in the Oretz, and movement in the spheres, which known to be the Galgalim, which make everything happen, again, as articulated in the famous Rambam in Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah. These are the Galgalim. The Rambam speaks about it there, but no, the Galgalim is this which the spheres which turn, and ultimately there's the Ikir Galgal HaGodel, and make everything turn and make everything function and happen. Ultimately, the anhaga of the Olam, the conduct of the world, should unfold the way it does. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that He moves them and guides them the way He liked to. Like in other words, the way that Hashem desires to, just like the neshama makes the body function, and leads and guides the guf like it desires to. Make no mistake, it's not like that, but because the parable over here, this metaphor of the body, is not similar to the nimshal, to the message when it comes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and its creation. Because body and soul are truly separate one from each other, in their original makeup and their original root. Because the creation, the coming about of the body and the core of the body does not come from the neshama. It comes from the conception, in other words, the union of father and mother. That's where the physical body comes about, not from the neshama. So in the onset, in its root, it has its independence, rather. As well, subsequently, and even the way it develops, it's not from the neshama. Well, there is some energy of neshama as well. That's what Alter Rebbe writes, levado. It comes it comes through the eating and drinking of its mother, kol tisha chadashim, all the 9 months. So it's dependent on that very sandwich and drink of water or other drinks with the mother constantly for those 9 months, consumes in order that there should be in health, to maintain the stability and health stability of this fetus, not solely from the neshama. And subsequently, through its own eating and its own drinking, the body comes to. So obviously in the beginning it's nursing, but again it's nursing in order that the body should stay alive. Which this nursing, this milk, is coming from it's a combination of all those nutrients which the mother consumed, and eventually has to start eating itself in order that the body should be sustained. The body should be able to exist, continue to exist. As opposed to, in stark contrast to heaven and earth, their whole existence was created from the state of ayin, from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, from the absolute ayin ve'efes, total nothingness, meaning nothingness in our eyes. In our eyes, can't say the word nothingness, that's the yesh hamiti, that's the true yesh. But the ayin ve'efes hamut, from that ayin, from the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is to us, it's an abstract energy, but that's HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's the ayin ve'efes hamuchlat. That absolute ayin ve'efes, that is the mere energy of the whole entire world, every part of the world, Bashamayim Memalva La'oretz Mitochas, and everything is Mitachas La'oretz. Their mere existence comes from that Dvar Hashem, which is Mahava Machaya Umekayim, in a state of Ein Liyesh, the ex nihilo manner of creation, and therefore, and it's Rak B'Dvar Hashem, it's solely with the word of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Baruch Pivis Baruch, and the spirit of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's mouth, based on the pasuk, B'Dvar Hashem Shamayim Naso V'Ruach Piv Kol Tzavav. And that verse, B'Dvar Hashem Shamayim Naso V'Ruach Piv Kol Tzavav. And not only something of the past, right now, as Alter Rebbe explained in the first and second chapter, right now, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is vitalizing, is giving chayas to that, to the creation, every part of creation, every area in creation. Tamid constantly, b'chol rega, every moment, tamid me'ayin liyesh, constantly creating them in the very same fashion, in the fashion of ex nihilo. Just like the existence of the ray of the sun within the ball of the sun itself, it doesn't have any independence. You can't even identify it, because the whole ray, that when you see the ray thereafter, it's only because of the sun. And when the ray is in the sun, we must say it's there, because if you begin after the ending, so to say, of the sun, so how much more so it's within the sun, but within the sun you can't identify it at all, because it doesn't have any existence. To say, oh, it's in there, and whatever comes out is just an extension, the way it was in there, and therefore, yeah, a little bit it has, it depended on the brightness of the sun, but it's there. No, it's not even there at all. And this is the emes of every part of creation. Unlike the independence of the guf of the neshama, even albeit there also the neshama gives significant, or the chayis, the total function, comes from the neshama. And the neshama, a guf without a neshama, is pointless. We inter that guf. But we're not talking about something which is pointless. We're talking about something which is totally dependent, as such, does not exist in the face of the Dvar Hashem, which is Mahava Machayim Mekayim. Im Kain, Im B'Teilim Bemes B'Mitziz L'Gamri L'Gabi Dvar Hashem V'Ruch Piv Yisbarech, and therefore they're completely bottled. And again, we will leave this final part of the chapter. We're close to the end, but we'll leave this final part of the chapter, but Ezra Hashem, to this coming week, this coming class. But this is what the pasuk is telling us via Daita Hayayim. Be careful, don't compare creation to anything which is something important, ikr, and then the secondary, similar to body and soul. No, not at all. There's no independence in creation. There's nothing to say, I'm here and I'm bottled to something else. There is nothing in the face of the Ayin Ve'efes HaMuchlat, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because the mere existence of everything is solely the Dvar Hashem, that energy of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is Mahava Machayim Mekayim Meisi, which gives it life and existence. And the whole reason why it appears, not that it appears differently, is because of a midah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which wants it, based on that very master plan, to have a dira, a dwelling place in this very physical world, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu allowed that expression of gvura. But that was a purpose and a reason. But namely, it's also HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The gvura is the same God. It's the same. It's two expressions. These are two expressions from the same God. Hence, there is nothing true be'emes within every created being other than the Dvar Hashem, which is Machayim Mahava Mekayim, say, other than the energy of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which gives it its true life and existence. Have a wonderful night.